Okay class, today we're doing a science lesson. Now I know this is probably not a new element, but it is new as far as defining it goes. As we're all well aware, it's been around for decades. So what you're witnessing here is history in the making. That's right class, for the first time in history we are able to scientifically define the towny element with a physiological degree of scientific certainty. So let's start with what an element is made up of. First of all, you need an atomic Bose number. That is, a minimum number of people to cause an attraction to one another. In this case, it's 12. Now, we'll get into how they're clumped together and attracted to one another, but let's continue with the element symbol, Tn. In order for this element to exist, it needs a specific element configuration. Now, a bar on its own, or even 4 bars, is pretty innocuous. But when you have at least 12 boozers who are drinking beer at each of those bars, well, now you're getting closer to what a towny element looks like. The final configuration is, you guessed it, a bar brawl. There's literally no reason for it except 12 boozers have been to 4 bars and drunk 9 beers each. Only then do you have what we are now naming the towny element. And the atomic weight of a towny element depends on which social media platform they're on, but it averages around 20.005 likes, hearts, or if you're on Instagram, followers. They're particularly noticeable because they're always out-ratioed by the FKR elements. Now, the towny element has some specific parameters for it to be a towny element. Where are they typically found? Well, they are typically found clumped in Norfolk County cliques, especially near D&E Pizza, municipal buildings, and obviously blizzard parties. They're commonly known to orbit authority figures and share a hive mind with institutional power. Not all of them, but most of them, are often bonded tightly to local law enforcement elements via decades of nepotism. Now, you might be wondering, if it's a real element and it has atomic properties, then what are its chemical properties? It turns out these are easily defined as well. For example, they turn green when placed near educated, attractive or well-spoken elements. They tend to gang up and emit toxic gas if threatened by newer, shinier elements. And they have an extreme affinity for gossip, group chats, and expired badge access. We've also noted that these elements react violently to due process, independent women, and televised trials. We've even witnessed many of them spontaneously combust when exposed to phrases like reasonable doubt, chain of custody, or defense expert. Despite any of us trying until we're blue in the face, these elements are insoluble in facts. That means it's a substance that stubbornly refuses to mix. No matter how much you stir it, it just floats around, pretending not to notice the facts. But here's the thing, it multiplies when it's in rumour solvents. That's right class, it thrives in environments rich in hearsay, half-truths and social media comments. Add 1 drop of speculation and watch exponential replication occur. No evidence required, just a juicy backstory and a group chat. What we did notice though, while it does multiply in numbers, it also becomes weaker, thus soluble. There's also a number of known compounds associated with this element. There's also TNMP, which means towny mean post. It causes online toxicity. There's also a common one associated with witnesses in the trial called the TNVP, victim paradox. This is where they claim moral high ground while orchestrating smear campaigns. And then finally there's the TNKP compound, which we generally associate with Kate Peters. However, this is called the Karen projection compound. It attributes its own insecurity to the defendant. Anywhere it's up to no good, it's generally projecting that onto Karen Reid. So let's move on to the SDS. That's the safety data sheet. For the sake of simplicity, we'll just brush over the basics. The general hazards surrounding this element includes it corrodes justice over time, it's highly unstable in proximity to federal investigations, and it's known to exhibit collective amnesia when exposed to their own text messages and or emails. It would generally come with a precaution: do not engage without protective skepticism, especially volatile when in packs or when hiding behind District Attorney Michael Morrissey. And for storage, it is best kept outside the jury box. Now, we noticed that one particular townie specimen, by the name of Plevin, had quite a volatile reaction when engaged in an otherwise amicable conversation with the baker. For this reason, we felt a simple warning label wouldn't suffice. After studying that interaction, we went ahead and developed a full safety data sheet reserved for particularly toxic substances. Our safety data sheet helps you first identify whether or not you're dealing with a townie. Under normal circumstances, a townie would be suburban dominant, the propagators of gossip, or engaging in obstruction of justice. It's not recommended to put them to any other use. Now, we haven't come across any imposters yet, but legit townies are manufactured by Generational Entitlement Inc. Here we've extended our hazard classifications and statements, warning users that townies are volatile social agents. They're toxic if challenged, they're flammable when alcohol saturated, and their distress signal word is jail. They're also known to scream it during arguments. In addition to its multiplication in rumour solvents, we've also added emits noxious gas when contradicted, turns green in presence of superior elements, and may cause nausea, eye-rolling, or desire to relocate. Of course, we've covered its chemical composition. It may come with trace elements of non-logic, which are extremely unstable. For first aid, if you come into contact with it, you want to wash with independent thought and humility. If you have eye contact with it, flush with unfiltered trial transcripts. And if you ingest it, which is strongly not advised, because there is no treatment and it may cause long-term bitterness. In case of fire, you would want to use sarcasm extinguishers or direct exposure to federal subpoenas. But do not use logic, because that will increase the possibility of combustion. If one of these townies is accidentally released, we recommend evacuating social media immediately. Contain the area with fact barriers and subpoena tape, and notify group chats of spill if they don't already know. For safe handling and storage, we're recommending to store away from courtrooms, bar stools and ring cameras, keeping them sealed during trials, and also keeping them away from investigative journalists. Like real journalists, not townie journalists. You know, the type that exposes corruption and doesn't just sit around twiddling their thumbs making up stories, allowing it to fester for decades. To keep it stable and non-reactive, we recommend the following. It is highly reactive to defence exhibits, federal investigations, TUI disclosures, and subpoena for personal devices. Stability drops substantially in the presence of logic, real evidence, and specifically out-of-towners. The element townie is incompatible with accountability. Do not recycle it. Dispose of it through civil litigation or electoral reform. When exposing yourself to a townie, be sure to wear your emotional PPE, including protective eyewear. Shade lenses are recommended, and earplugs or headphones are required to block unsolicited opinions. For toxicological information, it's important to note, chronic exposure may cause moral fatigue. Townies are known to spread misinformation, especially under pressure, and they are also believed to interfere with justice metabolism. And you may not know this, But the most toxic reaction you may experience when dealing with a townie is when they suddenly have an issue with investigative journalist Aidan Carney, which is why under handling and storage we specifically state to keep away from investigative journalists. Ecologically, the townie may contaminate jury pools, and it may be harmful to public perception of law and order. The townie element is currently regulated. It's currently protected by local patronage networks, and it's also under informal investigation by public opinion and means. This complete description of the townie element and the SDS datasheet that accompanies it was prepared by outsiders with functional reasoning skills. It was last reviewed every time someone says, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." In summary, the element TN is mostly harmless unless cornered by evidence, in which case it may bite, delete its texts, and go on a social media rant. Should you encounter a townie in the wild, do not panic. Simply remember, they believe due process is a bar tab and facts are a personal attack. Exposure to the element TN is not immediately fatal, but repeated contact may result in lowered IQ, compromise ethics, and encourage chronic small-town syndrome. The townie is proof that evolution can, on occasion, hit undo, especially in the presence of courtroom cameras and White Claw. So, our final tip is, in the event of exposure to the element TN, apply logic, rinse with federal oversight, and consult your local intergalactic solicitor. Mostly, don't feed it after midnight. Oh, and for heaven's sake, don't forget your towel.